we'll quickly go over this. I won't talk about it for too long, but I do want to make sure to show it off to you guys. And once we dig into the topic, I want to be able to like dig into that topic for as long as possible and not like forget to do the other thing. So let us show. I want to show you guys what I've been working on the last couple of days, because I know I've been kind of, you know, obviously I'm not streaming, although my videos are now coming out on YouTube from the previous stream. I haven't been making new streams. I had my son here, but I wasn't idle. Is it? Hold on. Yeah. So if you go to aderon.org/lore, it'll redirect you to our Notion. Specifically, the new lore section on the Notion. So basically, I spent a lot of time digging down rabbit holes and trying to string together the various stories over as they play out over the course of, you know, years or something like that. So that way I can present them to you guys. So I end up with like all these different tabs. And I start traveling down them, but I find all sorts of stuff. You know, as I'm skimming through stuff, I find other details about other things. I'm like, oh crap, that I missed before. So, you know, it's very easy to just spiral out of control. And I've always wanted to get my thoughts in order on this. And so ultimately that's what this is kind of for. But everybody gets to enjoy it. So this is my attempt to wrestle with the Eve lore. The goal here is that everything I can possibly find that is relevant to a specific topic, anytime I find another thing. Glorification the fit, mortification the unfit, Contempo Enterprises. You are glorified. That is a heck of a raid, my friend. Thank you very much for that. How was your stream? Hey, all the ducks. All the ducks. We'll take an aside for just a second, for sure. Wicked Eve, thank you for joining us. Escalation hunting in high sec. Oh, nice. Any success? This is just CCP erasing my comments in chatty. What? Hold on. Price of Plex is going to go up nuts as well. Yeah. We'll talk about that. So CCP Contempo doesn't work for CCP. Dropped a Pith C multi-spec and 200 million. Nice. Okay. So basically I'll show you what started it, all right? My goal last 2 days ago was to figure out more about what the different mega corporations want, and specifically like their different groups. We know about PKN. We know quite a bit about PKN, but the other two groups, I couldn't even like tell you who was part of it or what their names were for the actual group, besides the mountain faction and the ocean faction. So I had pulled up like every reference to Calikiota from the World News and was working my way through it when I stumbled upon, from the very beginning of an invasions, a reference to Port Sorum. And that reference to Port Sorum is why all of this exists. Let me explain why. By going to Port Sorum. So what is so important about Port Sorum? Well, that was actually the question I had and have had for several months. In this scope art video, which is the one in which Seriatim Foucault talks to us, at the very end of this video, he goes outside, and it says Port Sorum in ruins. Go away. And like, I was curious as to why, and I'd even been asked why. What is the point of that, or what's so special about this? Because they really make a big point of like showing off. Like, he walks outside, opens the door, the camera pans out, and nothing else gets said at this point. It just goes to the next thing. So it made me wonder, like, why go through all of that effort to make this shot happen? What does it mean, right? So then I found this reference to Port Sorum from the beginning of the war. Galactic Hour News Roundup, Triglavian Conquest and Edencom Fortress Edition. So this is 2020, 6/15. So July 15th, 2020. So in this case, the conquest of Rarivos, they're talking about the fall of Sakenta, Navula, and they reference Rarivos and Vale, which had already been collapsed. So this is still relatively early in the invasion cycle. And what stood out to me is that there's this picture down here. Like, they're down here, it talks about the different places, and it's talking about Vale and what's going on in Vale, and what's going on in Rarivos. But what I noticed was, hey, look at this. This video, this image, which I'm going to have to find the scope video where this image came from, is Port Sorum, Rarivos 3. And they've shown a video of, like, basically of this still image, but making it so that the ships are moving, so that way it looks like it's not a still image, you know, a little bit of effects or whatever. Fairly early in the war, again, but it's interesting that at the beginning of the war, they establish Port Sorum in Rarivos as being important, and then they go out of their way to reinforce it in this video, in the scope video. And then in one of the latest scope announcements, this is the end of the Angels event, where Ore releases the new compression technology. There's another note which says, towards the bottom, Edencom intelligence reports sign of limited but persistent Amar resistance on Rarivos 3 as Svarog forces scour ruins of Port Sorum. So there it is again, Port Sorum. Clearly is going to be an important location, or at least it is now a reoccurring location. I'll put it that way. And it's worth noting that the new comic book takes place is about the fall of Rarivos. So it is very possible / likely that whatever's coming, Port Sorum is going to be one of those locations that they utilize. Maybe not like a hypercritical location. I'm not trying to like get people too excited, but it would seem as if the Triglavians have attempted to secure Port Sorum for their own. But they've been fighting. So that makes it a conflict for us to participate in, say, some sort of shooter. But like I said, I found out a lot of other stuff while I was doing this. So I have it divided into locations, people, factions, organizations, events. I have converted the entire Precursor Crisis over to here. So my old Precursor Crisis document, you no longer have to go there. I have it divided in. It's not completely, like, I haven't made it pretty yet. Mostly I'm just trying to load up content at this point. So if anything looks unfilled out or kind of clunky, then, you know, it's still under construction and probably will for a little while. If you want to help participate, please reach out. But, so, like, for instance, not Caldari, or not factions, organizations. So a faction, by the way, we have factions and organizations. A faction is a group that is big enough to A, have sub-organizations, and B, usually I ask that it has its own ship line, you know, be that serious. So like for factions, I have the primary factions, the pirate factions, Sisters of Eve, Mordu Legion, SOCT, and then the precursor factions. So anything smaller than that as a unit would be considered a organization. So, for instance, Upwell is an organization because it's not tied to any major faction. Consequently, Or is an organization because it's actually beholden to now Upwell, previously Serpentis. So, in organizations, I have it divided by faction. So, Caldari, Galente, Mimitar. Now, a lot of these guys aren't fully filled out. Like, a lot of these are just empty because this is like where I'm just kind of adding things really quick, more or less. But I did want to show you guys what I found about the Caldari. So, let's learn a little bit about the Caldari factions, shall we? Or should we do that as a separate thing? We'll do that as a separate thing. I also have all of the War Clone factions. I don't know what, if any of these are going to be used, but these come up all the time. So I want to start catching as many of these as possible. I believe I have figured out not only the political agreements that exist now, but what each of the Caldari factions are, quote unquote, up to, what their goals are. So, but I will show you, like, in this case, in each of these, this is what it should end up looking like, at least in part. I want to have other things on here, but I want to have at least the timeline. So this is, I remember how I said everything Calakiota and beyond. So this was the product of that particular search. So every time that the JSL partnership, which is the mountain faction between Calakiota and Sukavesta, takes an action or is mentioned in the world news or elsewhere, they get a note here. So this is every event involving those two together since 2018, which is just the cutoff that I used right now. So obviously, anytime I run into anything then that is about these guys, then I will put them on here, and it'll continue to grow. Likewise, I think I might have less, but yeah, the PKN, I haven't done that much research. All right, I didn't do that much research because we knew a lot about them already. And then Combine TNR was the third one. And so now I have all of the information. I have the original names in Japanese, or not Japanese, but in Caldari. I have their actual, like, the abbreviation and what it translates into, the faction's nickname, and like the full name. So we have it's not just the JSL faction, it's JSL Partnership is the organization that they operate with. Just like Combine TNR. Combine TNR represents the combined actions of Hasiota, Ishikone, and Wiakomi. So screw it. I'll give the sample right now. So because it basically goes into it. So we know about PKN. PKN Interstellar does three things. One, they got the contract for Jita 44 station. Two, they make the Hypernet. And 3, they developed subcranial nanocontrollers, probably from Intaki technology. I've made other videos about this, and we can go into it another time. And then from that technology, we have expert systems. So expert systems, Hypernet, G244 revamp. These are all actions by PKN Interstellar, the Forest faction of the Caldari state, which is Lidai, CBD, and NOH. Lidai being the producers of the subcranial nanocontroller. There's by far more conspiracies about PKN than either of the 3 factions. Next, JSL partnership, Mountain faction. Mountain faction is only Kalakiota and Sukavesta, and some people comment about the fact that this is only 2 factions rather than 3. But here's the thing. Kalakiota is the largest mega corporation within the state, and Sukavesta is the 2nd largest mega corporation in the state. And prior to this political realignment, Kalakiota and Sukavesta were rivals. So the fact that they are now working together is somewhat, they're a force combined together in and of themselves, right? So don't discount the JSL partnership. But the question is, okay, so if we've got Hypernet, what is the Mountain faction working on? What are these guys working on? And part of the problem is that a lot of this stuff happened before they were known as the JSL partnership. You got to pay attention to these headlines that are Kalakiota and Sukavesta. So first they hold a mountain retreat. Then they get a contract to equip, arm, and fortify Caldari state colony defenses. Then they get they send a joint delegation to Sorum Prime with militia war zone ceasefire negotiation and agenda. So the Amar being the Caldari's principal ally within the faction war. Kalakiota and Sukavesta delegation meets with Lord Sorum, the most militant of the Amar and incredibly active in influencing the war zone, Amar Minmatar war zone, to discuss militia war zone conflict. And then we see peace talks between the major power blocks focused on recent flashpoints in the war zone, not least the Amar invasion of Flossiswin resumed. Following high-level meetings between President Jakazordan and Lady Kador, and separately Lord Sarmon's talk with Kalakiota Sukavesta delegation, representative delegates at the Concord Inner Circle appear to have aligned a framework for talks aimed at resolving the ongoing conflicts and preventing future escalations. Raise a hand if you honestly believe that that's going to work out. No hands? No hands? Good. You passed. Sukavesta and Kalakiota coordinated program of planetary fortification and system defense enhancements complete core hub phase. And then we also have a little bit of an excursion where the ghost ship shows up, the Erikio's Promise. And in that, this is one of the major times that we see that Kalakiota going out of their way to support Sukavesta, which was kind of the first exposure that they had a for realsy agreement. Then we see Kalakiota and Sukavesta led JSL partnership declare total focus on industrial efforts to secure Caldari state territory. Remember, specifically in the war zone. And according to the Caldari state, especially Blackrise, is theirs. In fact, most of the war zone has been literally bought and sold by the mega corporations. So, so then here we have the name of the JSL, Storm Peak Policy Trust. And basically together they called for the Caldari state to mobilize the citizenry into war status, which they did do, by the way, which I don't believe that they've undone yet, which means that, just keep in mind, the Caldari state, maybe the new CP chairman Saraki undid it, but I don't believe so. And if so, then they are currently in a state of martial law, and the citizenry is currently like, there's no citizens. They're activated, as it were. So, like I said, war is coming to New Eden. So that's what JSL Partnership is doing. They are actively building out. They're going to be the ones intruding into the war zone, as it were. And then finally, the Ocean faction, Combine TNR. This was a group that started being referred to by themselves, by their name, really early, and so I didn't catch who they were. But now we know. So basically, Hasiota, Ishikone, and Wiakomi have formed Combine TNR, and Combine TNR means Ocean Winds Corporate Community. And its major offering so far has been the Caldari Corporation, Combine TNR, the Caldari Corporate Consortium, in which Ishikone is a member, is assisting in the rapid construction of several air stations across the cluster. So, one of the two leaders of the Association of Interstellar Research, the new MPE entity. One of the two leaders is from Ishikone. And so as a consequence, Ishikone now, and therefore Combine TNR, have the contracts to help air in their establishment. And there's been a lot of building out there, so that could be very lucrative for them. And then in addition to that, there was a note that the appointment of Chair Saraki is a win for the Ocean faction, because Saraki is from the Wiakomi Mega Corporation. So that's cool. So yeah, we have PKN, Hypernet, and Expert Systems. JSL, invasion into Warzone, possibly coming. And Combine TNR are working with and for Air Laboratories. There you go. The three Caldari factions. So in the same way, I'm going to be continuing to build these out. Anytime I start doing any research and I stumble upon something, I just stick things where they belong. So slowly but surely it will get built out. So basically the Caldari doing all the cool things? No. They're all doing cool things. I just picked this particular thread to show it off. In events, I wanted to highlight a couple things. First of all, any of the modern threads, I'm starting to collect any references to them here. This is not in any order or rhyme or reason yet. And then events that are pretty much either prehistory or like huge things like the Apocrypha event or Caroline Star event go on this other column, although I mean, who knows? I can always organize this a different way. But the point is that I'm trying to get like the threads in order here. And the big one is that this timeline page is the full database that was made from the timeline that was created. So there was an old Time Glider timeline, and then that was had to be shuttered. And so the data from that timeline was put into a spreadsheet, and then I cleaned up that spreadsheet, and now I have reconstructed or imported the spreadsheet into this lore portal. So I'll probably be playing with this more later, try to clean it up more and make something useful out of this. But there are, I believe, well over 1,000 plus records in this timeline. So it's basically, if you go all the way to the bottom, it is I think it's the start of invasions. There you go. In addition to that, a lot of people might not know this, but if you want to get caught up on the earliest days of EVE Online, which a lot of interesting things happened, and are still relevant in some ways today. CCP actually used to, or I don't know who did it, but like there used to be full-on recaps of every year up until 2009. So, but they're not cataloged well on the lore portal, on the universe lore portal. So I've grabbed them all and I put them in order. So we have YC 105 all the way up through YC 111. So this is 2003 through 2009. And there's some really interesting beats in here. I've referred to it a few times already. The newest one is technology. We'll see about that. Because there's certain things that like continue to be used and play out. So this is more like, you know, there's people, places, and things, right? Technology would be the things portion of this calculation. People has also been like rapidly being filled out. I don't want to put like every character ever here, but basically if there's a character that gets mentioned more than once, they're probably going to start being tracked on here. A good example as to why is because the I haven't actually added this one here yet, but in Sine Wave Omega, they speak to an Amarian intelligence expert and they contact a very specific node. And that intelligence expert is or the Amar intelligence agent is now the head of the intelligence department for Edencom. And the thing that they got into is also mentioned again. Oh, now I need to go look it up. So yeah, that's the lore portal. Hope you guys like it. Feel free to use it. Share it around. Let me know if there's any improvements that you could have